Okay.
What barriers do you think you broke down as a woman in your career?
Okay, so I think mine are all very small, I think I'd like to say. So the first thing was I was the first neighbourhood officer ever to have had my life threatened in an anarchist magazine after doing something about antisocial behaviour in Wythenshawe.
How what? In an anarchist magazine?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I got Special Branch phoning me up saying, are you aware that you've been named? Didn't even know what the magazine was. So that was an interesting one. I was the first female on the van at my station ever. And I had to do that by going in a very unorthodox way. So I had a male and female sergeant. The female sergeant was the worst sergeant I have ever worked with in my life, but very much one of those who treated women really hard because she'd been treated hard, and that was the way that we had to be pulled up. The way it was back in the early 90s. And her partner, who was male, I asked him if I could go on the van because at the time...
Go on the van, do you say?
Yeah, so at the time we had a van and everyone else was in cars or walking, did a lot of walking. But the van was the premise of the two most senior officers on the group. So I got to the two most senior officers on the group, but then was refused to be allowed to go on the van because I was female. So being traditionally different and having already argued with the sergeant, I wrote a report. So for those of you who were on, we used to have to handwrite our 733s, our reports, and submit them to superintendent. So I submitted the report to superintendent with a cup of tea and a lot of humour, and the superintendent signed it. And then I placed the report, clipboard, the sergeant read out on parade. So they literally used to get all the pieces of intelligence and information and messages. And then he started to read out this 733 report, which basically was me accusing him of sexism because he wouldn't let me go on the van. At which point he threw the clipboard across the parade room at me and went, "How about the van then, Andrea, if you want?" But obviously by then I was killing myself laughing, and the superintendent was locked in the cupboard and then came out from behind also laughing. So it was a very humorous way to make a very clear point, but it was the way that it worked as we went on. And I was also one of the first female inspectors, I think, to go part-time and do flex working in GMP. That was a battle. It was a huge battle. It was a battle for very many years. But yeah, that was one of the first things. And then obviously, exactly as Sarah says, I became a firearms commander, but then I also ran the firearms collaboration. And the number of rooms I have walked in that post, national firearms strategic groups, where I have been the only female in the room, aside from female PA who plans the whole event, probably the most important person in the room, was quite incredible. Even though I had been a marginalised group for my entire career, that last 4 years of my career in the 2000s, when actually we should have been changing, was huge to walk into a room full of male men over 50. And that was the 95% of the groups for those last 4 years. So yeah, they're sort of like a few of the things that I think I've probably broken down as we've gone through.
Do you think it's changed now for people who are coming into policing now? I mean, what do you see as a difference? Because you only left for 18 months ago, a year ago.
Yeah. So I think what's changed is we've just reading actually an article before I came on, and it was about actually not about pulling people up and raising them. It was about fixing that broken bottom rung of the ladder. And actually, you know, a lot of the things that we're all talking about today as coaches, we've fixed that bottom rung, allowed more people to get to the next rung and more people to get to the rung after that. So I do think that a lot of people joining today will have a far better start and will have a far more inclusive start than we did, because we've done a lot of that work at those lower levels, but we're still trying to get up to the top.